Woo-hoo! All right, everybody, welcome back to the Millennial Sales Podcast. This is your host, Tommy Tahoe. This is the show where young salespeople come to learn more for their sales careers, make more money, hit quota, get to President's Club, all that jazz. Pumped to be here. We're rolling here in January. Excited to get into some content today on a Monday. Thank God it's Monday. Let's get this shit popping. Wanted to do a few things with this episode. Number one, want to provide an update for where we're heading this year for the podcast and the content. Number two, wanted to share a little bit just what's going on behind the scenes, what's up in my world, personally and professionally. And then number three, we'll get to some shorter form solo content. That'll be explained in part one why I'm doing that. So, before we get to that, real quick, hit me up on LinkedIn if you have questions. My name's Tom Alemo there. Please subscribe, review the show. It really goes a long way. Been doing this thing for goddamn 4.5 years now. So any subscribe on Spotify, Apple, YouTube really helps. Review it if you're on Apple or on Spotify. Helps to grow the show. So thank you for that. Without further ado, first thing, here's what's going on with the pod. We're still running strong Wednesdays, still holding those long form interviews with CEOs, VPs of sales, AEs, people that are killing it in the field of sales. We're going to learn from their stories. Today is a Monday, as you could tell, if that's when you're listening to this. And this will be a second episode that goes out on a weekly basis. And I'm going to tinker with a few ideas. Some of them are going to be solo episodes like today. Some of them are going to potentially be longer form, more casual conversations with the friends that I've made and am making in the sales world. Whereas Wednesday is really more specific. We're hearing about people's journeys. We're getting more tactical tips. Monday, I'm hoping to be a little bit less structured if it's with someone else, or just go ham and go up by myself and do something tactical. So I'm looking for someone also on that co-host mentality that might add a different flavor to the show. So if you think that's you, or you think you might know who that person is, give me a holler. So second, what's up in the world of me? Figure we could keep this a little bit more casual. I am on what is the date? Today's the 8th. It's Saturday evening. And what else would I be doing on a Saturday evening? But I'm in sober January. So no alcohol, no marijuana, nothing. Tobacco. I don't touch tobacco anyway, but I wouldn't even if I could. So nothing going on with me. Just doing that sober lifestyle, trying to flush everything out after the holidays. My sister got married on New Year's Eve, which was pretty dope, and just a lot of whiskey and wine was consumed and Bud Lights, and so this is me flushing that stuff out of the system. Otherwise, first week of the year. Obviously, first week for getting back into the sales quota with the $0. I was able to pull off, a good year for me last year. My first year at Gong, hit P Club, President's Club on December 29th. And now back at 0, which is certainly humbling, a bit frustrating, but that's just how the dice rolls. And that's what everyone's got to deal with, in the sales world. And so we talk about it. It's easy to say, yeah, we're all at 0. Go fucking climb up that hill again. But that shit's hard, man. It's hard. So I think one thing you got to do is just acknowledge we're back at 0. And, I was listening to my fiance tell me that, hey, she who's also in sales, hey, let's just dip our toe back in for the year, right? You can't sprint through every single day or every single month or anything like that. You got to go slow. You got to break it out little by little. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take some advice. And, I think one thing that that really struck out to me, one other thing, I got COVID at that wedding or around the wedding time and was stuck at my mom's for an extra week, quarantined. Not that it's bad to be at my mom's, but it's bad to be quarantined. And so, because of that, I flew back to the Bay Area on Friday, what was going on. I was listening to a great podcast between Rich Roll and Tim Ferriss on the Tim Ferriss podcast. If you know him, he's big on personal development. Rich Roll has an amazing story. If you don't know him, he's got a great podcast of his own. But he was, essentially an alcoholic. His life was going down the tubes. Turned ultra marathoner, turned vegan, turned amazing podcaster, best-selling author, so on and so forth. And he's got 500 plus episodes on his show where he talks about running and racing and biking and things like that. He talks about veganism, which that's not my jam personally, but pretty interesting stuff. Talks a lot about spirituality and yoga and just overall self improvement, which I love. So he had him on the show, and they were talking about Rich's training for endurance races, and he talked about phase 2 training. And so I'm no expert of this, but I have done some races, and I'm actually training for one this year as well. And the concept behind zone 2, I think it's zone 2 or phase 2. Clearly, I'm not an expert, but he's talking about zone 2. And essentially, there's a few different zones for your heart rate, right? Like zone 1 is you're listening to this podcast. I'm just sitting here, right? It's just kind of like your resting heart rate. And then as you go up, I think zone 3 or 4 is where you're like pumping it. You're doing sprints, or you've got a ton of weight that you're pushing, or something that's really accelerating your heart rate, right? It's really intense. And zone 2 is, if you've ever jogged or biked or anything, but you could still talk to someone, right? You're still at a conversational pace, they'd call it. And the whole point of this is that if you're training for an endurance type of an event physically, you want to be in zone 2 as much as possible. I think 85% of the time, roughly. And so what that feels like is that it's not really a push. It doesn't really feel that hard. You might even get done with that 45-hour long run and feel like you left a lot in the tank, and you're maybe not sweating as much as you think you should have, or your legs aren't burning like you think they should be. And the mistake that a lot of people make is that they start to push it more, right? And so they start to go harder. And that doesn't build up the aerobic capacity that you need to complete an endurance event. Let's say if you're running a marathon or ultra marathon or anything like that. And so the best way to do it is to spend longer periods of time, but under that shorter tension. And I thought that's interesting, not only physically, but mentally, right? When we're thinking about our years and how we're going to play this year out in 2022, the mistake that I've made before in the past, and if you're an ambitious young person or not young person, but an ambitious person that's getting after it, you might have the tendency to put too much on your plate. You go ham for a couple days, weeks, maybe months, and then you hit a wall. And then it's May 12th and you're burnt out and you got over half the year left. You're like, shit, I got to figure something out. I need to go to Hawaii for a couple days. And that buys you a couple months. And you're kind of playing this game where you're giving and taking a little bit, but you already used up a lot of your reserves early on because you're in the quote unquote zone 3 or zone 4, getting after it maybe too hard off the bat. So I'm starting to think maybe zone 2 is the place to be when we're thinking about how we want to span the 365 days of the year. And there will be times where you got to go up to zone 3 or 4, right? There's end of quarter, end of month, perhaps. The weeks where you're leading up to a vacation or you're going to be out or something's going on where, you got to put in extra work. Maybe you have a big life event coming up and you just had a kid or you just bought a house, and there's days and weeks where it's like, man, my life is crazy. And you got to pull out all the stops that week. I'm not saying, hey, you're going through a tough time and let's just give up, right? Or you just had a kid or just got married or just bought a house and, I'm not going to help move. My spouse, my significant other can do all the work because I got a sales job. Or, hey, I'm not going to do any work and I'm just going to worry about the move and I'm going to let everything slip. It's neither of those. It's understanding that there are going to be times for those sprints, but 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, we got to be going in that 1% better type of mentality. What are the few things that I can do today that are going to set me up for that long-term success? And how do I go at a consistent rate for all the things that matter, the big money, things that need to get done, right? The prospecting that you need to do every day, right? The follow-ups that you need to do, the pipeline touches, things like that. You're better off doing, let's just call it 10 prospecting emails a day consistently. That's not a lot. And I'm really just kind of throwing out random numbers, but you're better doing that 10 than doing, none for a month and then 50 every single day for the next month. You're going to wear yourself out that way, right? It's better to do, I'm going to do 10. And if for some reason you get to do 20 that day because you had extra time or you were feeling it, you were in a rhythm, great, you went above and beyond. But here's my minimum. Here's my fundamental benchmark standard. I'm not going to go below this. I'm not going to go below the 10. And then we're going to keep building up from there. That's the way to be in the zone too, I think. I think there's also a lot to be said about taking care of your mental health in other ways, right? Having an exercise outlet, having some sort of way that you can let your mind rest, whether that's meditation, whether that's prayer, whether that's taking a walk. There's a lot of ways that you can, I think, achieve a similar result there. I think it's having a community, it's having friends and family, it's having a fucking hobby, which is something that I've pushed away for years in building everything that, just doing something because you want to do it. So I think it's having all those things in tandem with what you're building in your sales career or otherwise that helps you get to zone 2. And the last kind of topic that I wanted to cover on today's pod is this book. If you're on YouTube, you can check it. Principles by Ray Dalio. I reread this book over the holidays and it was very impactful for me. Ray Dalio, if you're not familiar, is one of the probably wealthiest people in the world. He runs one of the most successful hedge fund companies, Bridgewater Capital, in the country. He's friends with the likes of Tony Robbins and other folks like that. He, really is a counterintuitive thinker. And that's what I really appreciate about him. And his book is thick. It's about his principles. It's about thinking in first principles, right? And what principles are, first principles that he's talking about are, what are the 5, 10, 15, whatever the number is, what are those things that that make the biggest, that happen over and over again, that if you can master these few things, you're going to be able to get it right? And maybe that's a way that you see the world. Maybe that's a way that you have to be internally, like, one of your principles is about how disciplined you are or how creative you are or how compassionate you are or hardworking, so on and so forth. So he's got a list of work principles and life principles, which are all very interesting. And I'm only going to talk about one of them that is my favorite, which is a simple equation. That's pain plus reflection equals progress. Pain plus reflection equals progress. And I think there's a lot to that, right? If you think about how you've learned things and grown in your life, it's probably followed this equation. Whether we're a young kid and we touch the stove, there's your pain. Ow, shit, I just burnt my hand. You reflect on that. Wow, that hurt when I touched that hot thing. That's not good. And your progress is, I'm not going to do that thing again. And I can speak for myself. I've made a lot of mistakes. I make mistakes every single day, both in business and in my personal life, where I feel the pain, I reflect on it, and then I improve. And I think the what's going to happen no matter what is you're going to feel pain. Everyone's going to fuck up. Everyone's going to make mistakes. Everyone's going to feel that internally and externally. The difference is in the reflection, taking time to think about it, to talk with people about it, to write it down, And that's where the learning, that's where the progress, that's where the growth comes from. So I'd encourage everyone to do this more frequently. There's no shortage of mistakes we're making. There's no shortage of pain that we're in. But there's probably a shortage in the reflection, because instead, what's better than reflecting? What's easier than reflecting? Scrolling on Instagram and TikTok. Just going and watching Netflix. Downing, a 6-pack of beer and just chilling and watching the game. And in their own right, there's nothing necessarily wrong morally with any of those things. But if we take a little bit of time away from some of those leisure activities and spend some of that time reflecting, I think there could be a lot of good there. And I think that's how we're going to make progress throughout the year. And so I'd recommend, whether it's once a day or once a week, take some time, reflect, write it down. You don't have to share it with anyone. You don't have to turn it into a blog post, but for your own good. What were some of the goods and the bads from the day or of the week, and what can I learn from them? And how can I do that better the next time? And so when the next time occurs, you'll have that memory itched in your brain, and you'll be able to say, oh, this is another one of those. I'm not going to do it the same way this time. I'm going to learn. I'm going to improve. So that's my thoughts for this Monday. You're going to see the same type of baller content. I got a great episode coming on Wednesday with Dale Dupree, the sales rebel. He's a boss. He's a beast. I think you're really going to enjoy that conversation. I sure did. And you're going to see some weird shit coming out of this Monday content. Who knows what's going to be next? A longer form solo, another guest, something else. Who knows? But I appreciate you being with me on the journey. Again, I post every single day on LinkedIn, Tom Alemo. I'm on other socials, Instagram and Twitter and TikTok at Tommy Tahoe. Again, show a subscribe and a review for the podcast would mean a ton. Otherwise, I'll be talking with you later this week. Peace.